New evidence has emerged contradicting Israel's account of a deadly attack on Palestinian aid workers in Gaza. A nearly 5-minute video discovered by the New York Times on the mobile phone of a deceased paramedic shows ambulances and a fire truck with emergency lights clearly activated when Israeli forces opened fire. The convoy was traveling south on a road north of Rafah in the early morning of March 23rd when the incident occurred. The footage reveals that the vehicles were unmistakably marked with Red Crescent emblems, directly challenging the Israeli military's claim that the vehicles were advancing suspiciously without headlights or emergency signals. The video shows rescue workers in reflective uniforms, exiting their vehicles before intense gunfire erupts. The gunfire continued for the whole 5 minutes of the video, recording in the background. The paramedic who filmed the incident can be heard reciting prayers as the attack unfolded. "Forgive me, Mother. This is the path I chose to help people. Allahu Akbar." The bodies of 15 aid workers were later discovered in a shallow mass grave alongside their crushed ambulances and a vehicle marked with a UN logo on its satellite. Imagery analyzed by the New York Times shows Israeli military bulldozers and an excavator near disturbed earth where the vehicles were buried, along with the 15 bodies. Dr. Yunus al-Khatib, president of the Palestine Red Crescent Society, presented the evidence at the United Nations headquarters, stating it contradicts Israel's version of events. Their bodies have been targeted from a very close range. Israel knew exactly where they were because they killed them. Their colleagues were in agony. Their families were in agony. They kept us for 8 days in the dark jargon shop again. Secretary General of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, IFC, warns against the normalization of killing humanitarian aid workers. They believe their Red Crescent-marked vehicles would make it clear who is inside and their purpose. They believed international humanitarian law meant something that healthcare workers would be protected. They assumed that meant they would not be a target. But they were wrong. Tragically horrific. Only wrong. So I'm writing with a plea. Make that assumption right again. Those deaths in Gaza, while especially awful, were part of a growing trend. More and more humanitarian aid workers are being killed around the world. The trend must be reversed. Munter Abed, a 27-year-old Red Crescent volunteer, provided a first-hand account as the sole survivor of the massacre to The Guardian. He was in the first ambulance to arrive at an airstrike scene when Israeli forces opened fire, killing his 2 colleagues in the front seats while he survived by throwing himself to the floor under the door opened. And there they were, Israeli special forces in military uniforms, armed with rifles, green lasers, and night vision goggles. They dragged me out of the ambulance, keeping me face down to avoid seeing what had happened to my colleagues. Abed recounts, watching helplessly as subsequent ambulances and fire trucks arrived. Each one met with gunfire. He witnessed Israeli forces using bulldozers to bury the vehicles and bodies in a pit. The Israeli Defense Forces claimed they had killed 9 militants, but no other bodies were recovered. And Abed insists there were no militants traveling with the ambulances. After being detained and stripped, beaten, and interrogated, Abed was eventually released. He describes his mental state as shattered, but notes the increasing danger faced by emergency workers. During Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's visit to Hungary on April 3rd. A senior Israeli official revealed that Jerusalem is in contact with multiple countries regarding the potential relocation of Palestinians from Gaza, while the United States is reportedly not actively advancing this plan. The official claimed that several nations have expressed interest. They want something in return, not necessarily money, but also strategic matters. We want to free the hostages and eliminate Hamas. And then there's a possibility for wide-scale immigration. The official cited an unspecified poll suggesting that 60% of Gaza's approximately 1.9 million residents would consider emigrating. However, critics argue this initiative amounts to ethnic cleansing. Despite Israeli assurances that no one would be forced to leave, Arab nations have strongly rejected requests to accept Palestinians, maintaining that Palestinians should remain on their land and warning that such relocations would merely export the conflict to their territories. Jerusalem has not publicly committed to allowing those who leave to return. The senior official suggested that while Israel would retain overall security control of Gaza, it aims to transfer governance to a consortium of Arab countries led by Gulf states. However, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, Egypt, Morocco, and others have conditioned their participation in on Israel, granting the Palestinian Authority a foothold in Gaza to facilitate an eventual two-state solution, terms Netanyahu has consistently rejected. Meanwhile, Hamas has announced it will not move Israeli hostages out of areas in Gaza that the Israeli military has ordered evacuated, placing responsibility for their safety on the Israeli government. The statement comes as the IDF issued evacuation orders for the entire Rafah area, Gaza City's Sharjah neighborhood, and other northern areas of the Strip. Half of the living Israeli prisoners are located in areas which the Israeli occupation army has requested to be evacuated in recent days. We have decided not to transfer these prisoners from these areas and to keep them under strict security measures which are extremely dangerous to their lives. The militant group has claimed that Netanyahu's government bears full responsibility for the hostages' lives, arguing that most captives would be home today had Israel adhered to the January agreement. Israel has captured new territory in the Gaza Strip as part of a strategy to seize land after they violated the ceasefire with Hamas on March 18th by bombarding Gaza. In the middle of the night, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced the capture of what he called the Morag Corridor near a former Israeli settlement in southern Gaza. Though the extent of the territory and Israel's intentions for it remain unclear. Since March 18th, Israeli forces have conducted extensive strikes on the remaining Palestinian population, seized the next room corridor in central Gaza, and expanded ground operations in both northern and southern regions. The military has issued sweeping evacuation orders, again displacing more than 140,000 people, according to the United Nations. At least 33 Palestinians, including 18 children, were killed and over 100 wounded after Israeli airstrikes targeted 3 schools sheltering displaced families in Gaza City's Tufa neighborhood, according to local officials. The deadliest strike hit the Dar al-Arqon school, where 29 people were killed in what was meant to be a refuge from the violence. The Gaza Health Ministry reports that over 1,000 people have been killed since fighting resumed in an attempt to pressure Hamas into accepting a new hostage release deal. Netanyahu had halted all aid deliveries to the enclave on March 2nd, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis and leading to starvation. The World Food Program warns it has run out of flour and fuel needed for bakeries and will distribute its last food parcels this week, with remaining supplies expected to be depleted within 2 weeks. The lack of aid has triggered violent competition for food and driven prices upward. The U.S. continues to give Israel full impunity to wage war in Gaza and escalate tensions with Iran with little pushback or accountability. Now Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to visit the White House next week, despite his ongoing corruption trial, to discuss issues ranging from tariffs to military strategies, including potential strikes on Iran and the stalled Gaza ceasefire talks.